Right, this is the very start. Before I'm going to configure anything, I'm going to verify whether some very vital configuration is set up in the system. If any of these transactions in your system is going to look different than to mine, then that would be an indication that I would at least give the suggestion to rent another system. First of all, I want to verify the fund management status. Double click on this transaction. In this system, funds management is switched on. Now, in some systems that you are renting, you get a system dump actually when you try this transaction code. If that happens, just assume that funds management is on. If it's not on, it's not a big deal, but it just means that when you create or maintain a company code later on, that a certain field doesn't need to be filled in with a value. So that's all right. But more importantly, we want to verify the valuation level. And in this system, the valuation of area must be a plant. If it's set to company code, which is actually quite rare, you should actually rent another system. This is really a very high recommendation from me. So let's go out there. Now let's look at evaluation control. And here it says that evaluation grouping code is active, and that is extremely useful because then you can group financial postings together. If it's not active, not such a big deal, but it will get out of line with the instructions that I give you, and you will have more problems, making sure the postings are happening automatically. So still, I would recommend to rent another system to make sure that valuation grouping is active. If it's currently not active, I would not advise you to make it active because this will influence everyone who's using the system. So I would just stay away of making any of these changes, although you would be able to do so. Then I want to verify general ledger accounting. This is quite important because I want to make sure that new general ledger accounting is active. This is new functionality. I would imagine that every company using SAP at the moment is going to use new general ledger accounting, and so should you. And certainly not deactivate it when it is active. If it's not active, then don't activate it. This is again an example that if this is not already active in your system, then I would recommend renting another system. Certainly not switch it on, certainly not switch it off. I would certainly not recommend that because it will impact everyone who's using this system. So again, with this transaction, for verification purposes. Now I want to look at the document splitting method. So I would say that this is what I want to display. That is new general ledger. That is not the one that I want to look at. This is the one that I want to look at. There you go. So document splitting. It is a very interesting functionality to make sure that you can look at your financial accounting from various different points of view, like for instance when you want to do it by profit center or by segment. It is the new functionality that is linked with the new general ledger accounting, and I would expect that document splitting is switched on, that inheritance is switched on, and that the method used for splitting is this code here, code number 12. If this is not set up in your system, I would recommend renting another one. Also, don't get into the temptation of making any changes related to this customizing. It is either this or nothing, really. That is what I would recommend. Okay. And again, also related to document splitting, the characteristics. This is what I would expect in your system as a setup. I would expect that business area, profit center, and segment are listed, that zero balancing is switched on for all of them, but I would only expect the profit center and the segment to be mandatory. Now, if the mandatory indicators are not set, that is not the end of the world. That's okay. But I would expect that any IDES environment would have at least these two switched on. The only reason why it's not switched on, or actually the reason why one of these are not listed, is just because other people are renting this IDES environment and they don't know how to handle new general ledger accounting and document splitting. And even though you are not a financial consultant, you need to be aware of this functionality and just get used to the fact that you need to set certain things up for this. Okay, so this is what I expect to see. If these mandatory fields are not linked or are not switched on, that's okay. I would not expect that the business area is a mandatory field. At least my prototype is set up in such a way that the business area is actually not taken into account as a mandatory posting for document splitting. Okay, so these are the verification settings, which I call bundle 01.